My wife, this is real good. The Lord's blessed me with a very good wife. I'm thankful for her. When we were at camp meeting, she was looking around for some way to spend money, I guess. And she found a bookstore where they had a lot of used books. So I went with her. And we grabbed some books and bought them at a good deal. I got a book on the shelf that's called Harry Orchard, The Man God Made Over Again. And I want to tell you briefly the story here. The experience in this book happened right around the turn of the century. In fact, it was 1905, 1906, right in there. There was a man named Harry Orchard who was a hitman for a radical labor organization. And they, of course, were trying to get the best dollar they could in the workforce. And if they didn't like someone, they would send Harry Orchard after that person to execute him. Now, Harry Orchard tells the story of his life. He was raised in a home with a very godly mother and a wicked father. But his mother was a wonderful blessing in his life. He did not want to leave home because he loved his mother. Finally, he was forced to leave home, but he loved his mother so much. There was a number of times when his father found out that he had been working for a neighbor. Evidently, back in those days, you were paid wages a few months afterward, that the father would go and collect the wages. He finally became so disgusted with that, he told the next man that hired him, he said, "Look, you must make an agreement with me that you will not give any of the money that I've earned to my father." The man said, "Fine." When he came to collect his paycheck from that man at the end of 3 or 4 months, the man told him, he said, "Oh, by the way," he said, "there's your father owes someone else money," and he said, "I'm paying that man the money, and here's what the little bit that's left over." But his mother loved him. She was a wonderful Christian woman. He got married. He had a wonderful marriage for a little while, a few years. He and his wife loved each other very sweetly, but things finally started getting in between them. They were picking over little things. He finally started getting into card playing and drinking and things like that. He finally left his dear wife and a brand new baby, and he took off with another woman, headed out west. And within a few days after they'd done it, they both looked at each other and said, "You know, we really wish we hadn't done this." But anyway, he became very involved with a radical labor organization. And there was one man that this organization especially hated. His name was Governor Steunenberg. Governor Steunenberg was a man of tremendous character. He was not a Christian, but he was a man of tremendous character and tremendous bravery. He had no self-concern about danger as long as he was in the line of duty. He did a tremendous amount of good for the state of Idaho, and he happened to be married to a lady who was a Seventh-day Adventist. Often she would plead with Governor Steunenberg to give his life over to the protection of Christ because she knew of the threatening letters that he often received. She knew of the 2 attempts on his life that had so far been unsuccessful, and she pled with the man to give his life to Christ. One Sabbath morning, she again made her appeal to Governor Steunenberg to give his life to Christ. He did not immediately respond, but he paced back and forth in the floor of his home and sang the song in his beautiful tenor voice, "Near, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, e'en though it be a cross that lifteth me." And he sang the song, "Near, my God, to thee." He decided to act on the appeal of his wife. He gave his life to Christ that day, and he told any business associates that tried to contact him that day that from henceforth he was going to keep the seventh-day Sabbath with his family. That was the very day that Harry Orchard assassinated Governor Steunenberg. He set up a bomb at the outside gate of his house, and when Governor Steunenberg left the house, evidently around sundown, to take care of business after Sabbath, the bomb went off and killed Governor Steunenberg. They weren't really sure who had done it at first, but they finally got a hold of Harry Orchard, and back in 1905, they offered $25,000 to anybody who knew who it was, and they got him. They got him. Harry Orchard said that when they first took him to court, now this was a huge case. It was a huge case because it had been involved in so many things. He said, when they first took me into the courtroom, he said, I was like the devil incarnate. And if you see a picture of him, you can see the wicked, evil look on his face. He said, for weeks, the Spirit of God struggled with me, and I refused to listen. He said, finally, I gave in to conviction. He said, I had little to fear from man because he knew he was probably headed up for the death penalty. But he said, I knew I had a lot to fear from God. He said, I thought there was little hope that I could be saved. But he said, there was a little pin light of light in my mind that maybe the mercy of God would be even extended to me. A man by the name of Paulson from Hinsdale, Illinois, sent him a Bible. At first, he was very upset with the arrival of that Bible. But finally, you know, when you're in a prison jail cell, you probably get bored, and Harry Orchard began reading that Bible. And the Spirit of God began changing his life. The trial took some time, well over a year later, when he was again brought to trial. The judge told the sheriff, he said, bring Harry Orchard in the courtroom. The sheriff said, he's already in there. And the judge said, well, where? And in his own testimony, it's right here in the book, the judge describes the amazing change in the man's face from 1 year before. The hardened look of a criminal was gone. And he saw a peace and rest on the man's face. He had been transformed amazingly, even in 1 year. Harry Orchard said, I had little to fear from man, but I knew I had a lot to fear from God. And he said, I was determined to tell the entire story of truth and to confess all of my sins, even before the world, not because of his fear of man, but because he wanted to be right with God. And his testimony was so amazing. He got examined, cross-examined. One psychologist spent 8 hours with him, and they tried in every way they could, because there was other people in the lineup to be also condemned, and they tried in every way they could to confound his witness, but his witness was articulate, it was full of facts, and he never once wavered or became angry or anything. He told it all just like it was. And he found peace with God. One day, Governor Steunenberg's wife sent her son, Julian, to see Harry Orchard. And the prison warden said, Governor Steunenberg's son is here to see you. He's got a package wrapped that looks to me like a gun. I don't think I would see him. And Harry Orchard thought or said to himself, well, if he shoots me dead, I get what I deserve anyway. He said, bring him in. And Julian, Governor Steunenberg's son, was so kind to Harry Orchard. He said it just was like coals of fire on my head. And he said it was a bunch of literature to read and an appeal from Mrs. Steunenberg to give up your soul to God, confess your sins, and get right with God and find Christ. And he said Mrs. Steunenberg's influence, he saw her 4 times in person. He said Mrs. Steunenberg's influence upon my life was very dramatic and very powerful. There's pictures of him in here. It's an extremely fascinating story. And from what I understand, on his tombstone are written the words, Harry Orchard, the man God made again.